We watched a very bad movie last night.
Ooh, what was it?
It was called Little Italy.
All right.
It was a romantic comedy. And we just did that thing, you know, when you browse streaming stuff and you're just like, fuck, I don't want to look anymore. This is it. This is what we're watching.
Yeah.
And we literally got through half of the movie and we were like, should we stop? Because this is very bad. And we're just like, I don't want to look for anything else. So let's just keep going.
Oh, what? Who was it starring?
Starring Hayden Christensen.
Oh.
Yeah. He looks totally different. He looks so like beleaguered. I don't know what happened to him.
He was a little Lily, you know.
I guess. And then Emma Roberts. You'd recognize her. She's in lots of things. Small blonde woman. And the premise was these two childhood best friends. They grew up in Little Italy of Toronto, by the way. It's Canadian.
All right. I did not know Toronto
I didn't
had
either.
a Little Italy.
I learned a lot about Canada. And they had... originally, their families worked together in a pizzeria, but then they split up, and now it's like a family feud. She went away. She came back to town. Classic rom-com stuff.
Is this a Lifetime movie or something? This sounds dumb. This a Hallmark movie?
You know, I don't know who produced it, but here's the thing. It was made in 2018, which is insane to me for several reasons. One of which, there's two scenes I want to talk about in this movie. So spoilers ahead for Little Italy. Which, unfortunately, we didn't realize until after we watched it. It had like a 3.7 on IMDb.
That's not good.
Yeah, or maybe 4.7. Still bad. The two scenes that I found the most ridiculous, like the whole thing was bad, very bad writing, very just obvious shit. So these two pizzerias are in a feud, right? And they just keep escalating. At one point, one family, their idea of a trick is replacing their oregano with weed.
What?
And the way we find out about this is so the pizzerias are next door and they hear partying coming from the next one. And it has like everyone's like on tables and dancing. And I'm like, this is not what weed does to you. and like they figure out like the son comes in. He's like, this is an oregano, Dad. And we're just like, one, that's not what weed looks like. It just looked like oregano. And it's just like, that's some very bad weed you have there. And two, that's not what weed does. And they like got arrested. I'm like, this is Canada in 2018. I think weed's okay now. Like, you can't have that much of it probably, but also like, what the fuck? It's just a basic misunderstanding of marijuana.
And okay, you work in food service. You ostensibly know what your pizza smells like.
Yeah, that would be a bad smell.
And you're like dumping and putting in the oven marijuana flakes. Like, what?
Yeah, you would notice. Yeah, that was insane. They also had this weird horny cop who gave like the male lead like a pat down, which was very uncomfortable to watch. Yeah, it sucked. And then the second scene that I just like lost my shit over was that like the girl in this, the lead woman, she's like supposed to be a nice, like a fancy chef. She went to London for culinary school, and now she's like competing with another person to get hired by this like star chef.
Okay.
And she's supposed to be working on her menu, which stresses me the fuck out because she doesn't work on it like for most of the movie. And I'm just like, you should be cooking right now. Why are you doing this? And then the one scene where they show us her working on her menu, she just has like what looks like a knockoff version of Illustrator open and is just like dragging pictures of food next to descriptions of food as if that's how you make a menu.
Like a fancy chef thing too?
Yeah, this is supposed to be a nice restaurant. And I'm like, that's not how, you don't just like get to write down what you think is going to work. You have to like test recipes and shit. Like, this is not how you make a menu.
She's just like on Pinterest, like, oh yeah, I'll make that, drag that over.
Yeah, she's basically dragging and dropping photos, and you never see her cooking this menu. It's so weird.
Wow, it's incredible.
It was bizarre. Like those two scenes, I just lost my fucking shit.
Damn, that's the wonders of bourgeois culture, right?
Yeah, that's how I spent my Saturday night.
All right. Well, on that note, let's get back into this. Reading.
All right.
Oh yeah. If you want to follow along with us, we had this last episode too, but you can go to patreon.com/teachmecommunism, and you can actually follow along using Christine's excellent student notes, a PDF of all that. You can follow along there. If you're not up for that, you want to do DIY free version, you can just Google it. Karl Marx Communist Manifesto. You can find it at Marxists.org, and there's a completely free online version there for you to follow along.
But the Patreon version has little doodles and jokes, so
they're pretty good. They're pretty good. I will say, not an art critic, but pretty good.
I'll take that review. The next section, Section 2, Proletarians and Communists. I want to preface this with I found this section annoying because of the format. This section is very much the throwing shade section, where he's like, here's what these people say we're about. Here's what we're actually about. What I found was frustrating that this was like the format of rebuttal, but he didn't set up what these original people said. So it's just like, it's like me saying like, well, I think so-and-so's a real asshole because of this. But not even explaining because of this, just being like, I think so-and-so's a real asshole. Here's why I'm not an asshole. Instead of me saying, so-and-so said this about me, and now I'm mad. Mm-hmm. Like he didn't have any backstory to this. Yeah. Until like later in the section, I think he breaks it down. I'm like, why didn't you put that first?
Yeah. The way the whole document was created, actually, Frederick Engels, we mentioned him last episode.
Yes.
Was like buddy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Marx and Engels were in this group called the League of Communists, which sounds like
a good name.
Yeah. And they were like, guys, can you write like a manifesto or a catechism of what we believe? And they were like, that's stupid. No one wants to read that. No, we don't want to. But then one of them did write one, and it was shitty. And so Engels was like, no, dude, that's terrible. Like, throw that in the trash. I'll write you one, okay?
Oh, that's great.
He writes this question and answer for an FAQ.
I saw that at the end of this, and my document included that. And it reads like the fucking, raised Catholic here. It reads like the Nicene Creed of do you reject Satan and all of his works? Like that kind of thing. Yeah. That's immediately the tone I pictured.
Well, that's what Engels does, right? And that actually is the first draft, essentially, of what Marx is writing here. So Marx is kind of cribbing from that. So when he doesn't cite the actual question, that's because Engels did, and Engels said people say that you guys are about this, what the hell? And then he'll explain what the communists are actually about. Marx just left that first part out and just said, damn, communists aren't about this. They're actually cool.
Just a real editing problem, in my opinion.
Yeah. I also this is a little trivia note, but Marx procrastinated like crazy on this.
Oh, that's why you like him.
They got him to agree to write this more manifesto, more historically based thing compared to what Engels did. And he was like, okay. But then he fucked off for 2 months. They didn't hear from him. And finally they called him back. They got a hold of him and said, you got 2 weeks to write this or else,
Oh shit.
And he's like, oh man. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Relatable.
But yeah, all right, let's get into this second section here. Let's see. The first part that you had a question on, I think, is when it gets to the communists, what group they are in existing, working class parties.
Yeah, I was asking about, okay, what does the line of march mean? Just
the line of march just means what they need to do. What's the plan? He's basically here just saying communists are super cool. If you look at any of the working class parties, they're the guys who get shit done. They're the real dedicated activists. They know their theory. They know what the proletariat need to do to get things done. And they know what the bright future will look like.
Okay. My next question was, I think what you were talking about is the immediate aim of communists, blah, blah, is the formation of the proletariat into a class. And I was like, I thought they were already a class. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess that's what we're talking about, the class consciousness thing. They have to make it more official or something.
Exactly. He is referring to class consciousness there. He's saying make them realize a class, that they are this class and not that they
make them more organized, I guess, than just class in terms of we're all in the same situation, and make it more of we're all in the same situation. Now let's do something about it.
Yeah, you don't want them thinking, sure, I'm a worker, but I'm middle class. You don't want them mystified by that. You want them to realize, no, I'm a worker. I'm going to fight for the workers,
Okay. Let's see. What's next? All right. I was confused by this part.
Oh, but the property question. This is where you get to the property question.
Oh, gosh. I got confused. I literally, at one point, I wrote, LOL, can I have my own shit or not?
Right.
Because, like, I mean, I think communism sounds good, but I also want to, like, have a house. Is that okay?
It is okay.
Okay.
All right. So it's confusing, though. You're right, because he sets it up and says communism is not the abolition of property generally, but the abolition of bourgeois property. Because then he turns around and he says, the theory of communism summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property.
So that sounds like two different things. Yeah.
Right. So here's kind of how I understand it. I'm lumping all this into one thing because it's confusing to break it down by one by one point. So this whole like little red
whole section where I have a lot of red.
Yeah. Marx is talking about about different types of property kind of and what the communists think about that and what they want to do. Okay. And he says, he refers to self-earned property or personally acquiring property. All right.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really use the word, but he's actually there trying to distinguish between two different types of property. Okay. Personal property, all right, that's self-earned or personally acquired property.
That sentence read as like sarcastic.
No. He wasn't, I don't think, so he says hard-earned, self-acquired, self-earned property.
There was an exclamation point, which made me read it as sarcastic.
I guess so, he does sort of and doesn't sort of. He means it sarcastically from the point of view of a bourgeois critic who would say, you want to take away my hard-earned factory?
Yes.
And he's like, yeah, dude, fuck you.
You didn't earn it.
But what he's saying is people do earn their property because he says, do you mean the property of petty artisan and the small peasant?
Like I grew my own potatoes. Those are my potatoes.
Yeah.
But if I own a potato farm, like a giant one, and it's like a factory situation, then that's not hard earned.
Yeah. The factory owner taking that from you and selling it at a profit. Like, no. Yeah. That's what he's. So that's the distinction. Personal property is what you're concerned about. Regular shit that you own. Okay.
Can I still have all my jumpsuits?
Your phone, your laptop, your toothbrush, your clothes. That's fine. Communists still want you to have that, and they want you to even have as much as you want. That's okay.
Okay.
Do that. That's cool.
So let's say I'm in communist land. Things are great. I just have a house. They just gave me a house. How does house work?
Are you in the utopia stage?
Sure. Let's say it.
It's replicated. I mean, it's just there.
Okay. Boom. I can just make whatever I want anytime.
You can own it. You can own 7 of them. No one cares.
I can 3D print my house and my jumpsuits and my coffee.
Yeah. In socialism, I mean, you would definitely have a house, but like you might not own it. You might just kind of like stay there and it's provided for you. It's more of a social shared thing, but you probably don't. You definitely don't have like 8 of them. You might.
All right. I don't have to live with rando people.
No, you shouldn't have to. I mean, honestly, I guess if societies wasn't advanced enough to get it to where everybody could have their own house, you might have an apartment situation.
That's okay. I mean, I live in an apartment now.
Yeah. So that depends. But like Marx's distinction here for private property. All right. When he says, yeah, we do want to abolish private property, or what he calls modern bourgeois private property. That is tied up in social relations. And so it makes it confusing. The way he explains it is bad.
Yeah. Was this where I wrote the social status? I was like, what's the difference? Okay.
Yeah. He talks himself in circles here, I think. But to boil it down, it's when someone owns something and makes other people do work using it and makes a profit off of that. So it's very specific. Owning a factory, not necessarily private property unless you're actually using it. You're putting people into the factory, making them work, and taking the profit for yourself. That's what he refers to as the social part.
Okay, so basically no more employers.
Yeah, he's saying we're not going to have that exploitation anymore. Private property is referring to the means of production, capital. All right. It can be that factory situation. It can be, a farm that you have people working on and you take the profit from that. It can be unearned money in the form of like stock market trading and things and speculating.
Gambling.
Yeah, any of that is private property, things that you can make money off of, okay? And specifically, make money off of not by your own labor, but by someone else's.
Okay.
So like if you want to start a small business, an Etsy or something on your computer's not private property now because you're doing that. It's still personal property. You're not, unless
I'm the only one working on it.
Yeah, if you're putting someone else to work and you're paying them less than what they're producing, and taking that profit for yourself, sure, your computers become private property. And
so that gets very difficult, though, because it's like, that works on like an individual artist level, but it kind of breaks down as soon as you move anywhere from that. Like if you're, I want to open a restaurant, I'm going to have to source my food from somewhere. And if I want to make a profit, I'm going to have to like try to get the lowest price I can for it.
Sourcing your food is fine. You're entering into a contract with someone else, but if you're paying your workers.
Well, yeah. So you can only run a one-person restaurant.
You can run a one-person restaurant. You can not make a profit. You could just pay your workers whatever they're worth. And
break even every month.
Work it together. Yeah. You could, and this is where you'd kind of get more detail with worker co-ops and things. Workers could decide what they're going to do and then democratically like use whatever profits are made for the company. All right. So that doesn't go into your paycheck necessarily. That might go to growing you can still make a profit, but you use it to like, build the company and stuff.
Yeah. Instead of just like giving it to the owner. Confusing.
Yeah. Communists vary on whether they like worker co-ops like that or not. So it's an option, I guess.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Basically, no more employers, no more factories, none of that shit.
Yeah. When he says,
we can have them, but you can't have a boss. Right?
Yeah. You don't want a boss. Marx says communists want to abolish private property, but he's not saying like everybody's got to share the same toothbrush.
Thank you.
Yeah. He wants people.
Thanks, Marx.
Nobody gets to lord it over anyone else because they own something. They own the only way to make a living. That's what he's saying,
Okay.
He's also not saying like, let's destroy all the stuff. Let's destroy, the Google servers or the GM assembly lines are saying. He's saying we want to abolish the private property relations there. So like you said, no more bosses.
So yeah, you don't have to burn down the factory. You just have to get rid of the guy running it and
put it in the hands of the people.
Yes. Okay, cool.
There was a last thing I wanted to add on there. So you asked about, later though you say, in bourgeois society, living labor is but a means to increasing accumulated labor. In communist society, accumulated labor is but a means to widen, enrich, and promote the existence of the laborer.
Yeah, I wanted an example of that because I did not understand that at all.
Yeah, Marx says, currently, why do you work? You work to keep yourself alive so that you can work more, right?
Yes.
Because the only way that the boss is paying you is because it's a good deal for them, and they're paying you just enough basically to keep you alive so that you come back.
Yep.
So he's saying work is just begetting more work.
Okay, that makes sense.
And in a communist society, workers' labor would be good for them and good for society. It would not be, I'm working just so I can get by. It's, I'm working so that society produces shit that is good for society, for me.
Okay. So this is the hospital that actually is in business to heal people and not to make money.
And the farm that's in the business of feeding people. Not to make, it's, yeah. What people do at work benefits them and not the bosses. You don't have this parasitic class taking what it wants at the top. Now it's everybody's working for everybody, for themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. I like that. I thought this next section was interesting. He kind of rants about people who are all pro free trade, which has always been a very confusing term for me because I'm like, free, like, what do you mean? They make it sound good. Like, don't you want everyone to do business with everyone? I'm like, I mean, I guess so.
Yeah.
What's free trade?
Free trade's just the idea that businesses or theoretically individuals, anybody can buy and sell things with each other without there being a lot of taxes or regulations or whatever.
Okay.
What he's comparing this to, when he's saying, the bourgeoisie, all they talk about is freedom, free trade, whatever. But they're comparing that to the old Middle Ages. He says that the fettered traders of the Middle Ages, he's talking about like the old guilds.
Where there was a ton of rules on who can sell what and whatever. Who can sell what
where, how kings had all these restrictions on who could trade with whom also. And he then says, free trade is sure, yeah, it's cooler than the Middle Ages was. Like, that was dumb.
It's a step up.
Is itself bullshit in its own way when it's compared with not having any of capitalism's like exploitation anymore. He's saying communism doesn't want to buy and sell things in this way to make a profit for people because that means people are getting exploited. Free trade, it's nice because, you don't have to go through all the various regulations and stuff, but it's also bad because, who produced all those things that you're buying and selling? Somebody who was getting cheated.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to a business analogy because those kind of help me. Let's say I'm running my restaurant. Shay Christine. And I pay my workers, and at the end of the day, we have a profit. Can I just give that profit to the workers? Is that okay? Does that mean I'm okay?
No.
Okay, no.
All right. So you can't decide anything, is what I would say.
Well, I'm saying, okay, maybe, yeah. We as a group decide what to do with that profits. And we could decide, let's just split it up between us evenly, which is what I would do if you think about it in like a very small way, like if I'm working with a friend on something, that's what I would hope that we would do.
Yeah, I would say that this is probably soft communism here, but I would say that it's fine for you and your workers to decide together where that profit's going. If you have the power to decide where the profit's going, even if you decide it's all going to your workers, it's still a problem that you had the power.
That's still bad.
You shouldn't, is what communists would say.
Yeah, I mean, I get very angry when I think about later he gets into charity, which I have a lot of feelings about charity, because we shouldn't have to rely on rich people to survive. So like people make these big deals about like, oh, look at them like fairly paying their workers or like, donating their stuff to charity. I'm like, they could also not, is the thing. Like there's nothing stopping them from not, and most people don't. So like congrats to this one dude, but also like it shouldn't be a choice.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the distinction there is, does someone have that power?
Okay, cool. My next question was, that next part. Communistic abolition of buying and selling, of the bourgeois conditions of production, and of the bourgeoisie itself. I don't understand any of that.
So this is what we were saying with, he thinks, sure, free trade was better than the Middle Ages, but it's bullshit compared to the world where there aren't any bosses exploiting anyone at all. So communists want to, abolish buying and selling, all this marketplace of everything, and bring about this utopia where you just have what you want. And that's way better than free trade,
Okay. Yeah, it's like, what would you rather have, free trade or free everything?
Yeah, yeah, or freedom,
cool.
Like actual freedom.
Yeah, actual freedom instead of wage slavery.
I like the next passage because it made me think of something specific to America here. He says, you're horrified at our intending to do away with private property.
Oh, I loved this.
But in your existing society, private property is already done away with for 9/10 of the population.
Yes. I mean, this is what I was talking about earlier when it's like, no one can fucking buy a house anymore. Like most people are just getting by.
And what about good, quality, top-notch healthcare, right?
Healthcare, food. Like most of us are just like, fuck, I'll eat it. Like it's, covered in pesticides and like, or, it's going to kill me, but I'll eat it.
And so, he's calling them out and saying, oh, you guys are so scared that, we're going to take away your stuff. Well, you know what? Most people don't have this stuff. So deal with it.
It's true.
And then, you had the LOL here because he's like, in one word, he reproaches with intending to do away with your property. Precisely so. That is just what we intend.
And I drew a little guy shrugging and he says, you got me.
Yeah. But I think by this point, we broke it down to where you understand that when he's talking about abolishing their property, he's not saying everybody, line up to use the one bathroom in town. He's saying, we're going to make it to where people can't, exploit other people like that. Like,
okay. I think it's confusing to maybe it's just because like we have a very narrow or a very broad definition of property.
We have a conflated view of property that's done on purpose. They want you to think of yourself as a property owner because then you're like them, Yeah,
like the housing market. Like they want you to get invested in it, or like your 401k. They force you to get involved in something I don't really want to be involved with, which is fucking gambling, basically. But they make you invested in it so that way you don't want to overthrow it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, give you a little, small enough of a stake to where you fantasize that you are in, the real bourgeoisie class.
Yeah, you can feel like you know what they mean on marketplace when they talk about the stock market.
Yeah. And that it represents you and that it's a good thing when the line goes up,
Exactly. Freaky. Okay. I think I got the rest of this. Let's see. From the moment individual property can no longer be transformed into bourgeois property. What does that mean?
So he's saying basically individual property being like, let's say, my labor. All right. Mm-hmm. If that can't be exploited or stolen from me and transformed into some money in the portfolio of the capitalist, right? If they can't pay me less than I'm worth and they take that extra, then they're saying, individual, the individual has been lost. Man is no longer free because There's no more, there's no more big estates and things that they make money off of or whatever. That's the only time the bourgeoisie start crying about individuality, is when it refers to their individual right to exploit other people.
Okay.
He's saying basically they're being hypocritical about...
They want the right to exploit people, and they're sad that people want to take that away.
Communism deprives no man of the power to appropriate the products of society. This is what you're saying. Communism says, hey man, you can have whatever you want. You can own whatever you want. But all that it does is to deprive him of the power to subjugate the labor of others by means of such appropriation. So you can have what you want if you get it fairly yourself, like as a person, you just buy it or come across it, whatever. But you can't take from others unfairly. You can't be a boss, is what it's saying.
Okay. So, I mean, gosh, I keep going back to my restaurant analogy.
Do you secretly want to be a small business owner?
This is it. You've uncovered me. I just apply for that small business loan. No, I don't. It helps me kind of condense these ideas.
Sure.
So isn't the very nature of making a profit exploitative? Because at that point, aren't you exploiting the consumer of like, hey, I made this for 50 cents, but I'm going to charge you $20? Kind of.
Eventually, you wouldn't even have that. You just come in to the restaurant and eat. You're not doing it to make money because you have all the money you would want, You have all the things, not money, but things you would want.
You're cared
for.
But
in the interim, I mean, it's a surplus service. Like, it's not really, you don't need it. It's a luxury item, and you could distribute it in the market like that and say, I'm willing to pay some of my extra money that I get, on that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you're kind of taking from the customer, but the customer's not forced to show up at your place.
Okay, because that's I guess what I was confused about when you're saying like, you can still own things that you buy, but I'm like, well, if you're buying things, isn't that exploitive in some way? Like someone probably got fucked over making that whatever.
The way it's set up now, yeah. But if you remove the bosses and the workers were in charge or something, and they produce that thing, you can buy it, and no one's forcing you to buy it, so it's not like exploitative. But whereas if someone has to show up at the factory to survive, and they're paid less than they're worth, then they're getting
okay
used.
So there's like a phone factory, they're making phones, and this factory now is worker run, so the workers are being paid fairly and there's no bosses and they get to decide to do with the profit. Then it's cool if I buy a phone.
I guess so. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Sorry, I'm so selfish. I'm just like, can I still buy things?
Yeah, I just want my stuff. It's just fine. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people think that's a big hang up I think a lot of people have with communism is, what if I'm, living in a tenement with 8 other families and, we all have gray clothes and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll be that bad. I mean, again, there's such a difference between the interim and food replicator times. Like, you can't really account for that because we've never been in that.
Yeah, and it's a transitional society, so I don't think it's meant to be perfect. There's not it's not the ultimate good when you're looking at running the profitable restaurant with your workers. Like, ultimately, that's not where it's at. Like, it's fine for a little while.
Eventually, we just want...
It's better, but it's not the real thing.
Okay, real McCoy. Okay, what's this sentence mean then? Riddle me this. That culture, the loss of which he laments, is for the enormous majority a mere training to act as a machine. I think the he in this refers to the bourgeoisie.
Yeah, bourgeoisie culture. Marx here is talking about bourgeois culture being used as training for capitalism, as raising people up to believe that capitalism is good, to play their role, and to be thankful for it, to think it's good. Training to act as a machine. So like, you're this cog. It's great that you're this cog, and we love you. Thank you for your service in being this cog. Like, it's great and it's wonderful.
Okay, so the brainwashing that happens now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's see.
The next kind of question you had about the family and stuff.
So he talks again about family stuff, which is on capital. Let's see. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain, which is absolutely true. Like, I keep referencing the same fucking book because it's the book I'm reading. But I mean, so much of marriage is just an economic exchange for hundreds of years, thousands of years. That's what it was.
Yeah. That's definitely what he's saying there. And then you get to the next part. I think it's an interesting quibble.
What does he mean by this? He says, but this state of thing finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletarians and in public prostitution. Is this guy anti-sex work?
So I had to do some reading on this because I was unsure. Here's what I've gathered. Marx is saying that communists should generally be for the abolition of sex work.
Okay. I mean, I get it in the sense of like, there's exploitation going on if people are only doing it because they need to survive, I guess.
Yeah. That's the way I'm
I mean, he's treating it like every other work, though.
Yeah. So communists want to end wage work in general, right? Make it to where you don't have to work to make a living, end that exploitation. But that doesn't mean like to do so, we're going to go crack down on the workers and say, hey, asshole, get out of this factory, right?
Yeah, so they wouldn't do that to prostitutes either.
So I don't think he's advocating that they crack down on prostitution, although Communist Party, controlled countries, socialist countries or whatever, like Russia, Cuba, Vietnam, these places have especially in their early days when they were just they definitely cracked down, I guess, on sex work.
Ugh.
They did that. But the way I look at it is, like you said, abolish all work, right? So in the same way, with any worker, we want to help them where they're at right now, right? Communists want to help them unionize, help them fight for their rights, help them get better safety, better dignity.
Yeah,
that's what they want to do for workers. So that's what they want to do for sex workers too.
Okay, I can get behind that.
But they also don't want to have it to where anyone needs to be a worker or a sex worker.
That makes sense. So they're like, it's fine. I mean, in utopia, they would just have sex for fun, I guess.
So
right?
yeah, I was thinking about that too, and I was like,
how would that work?
I don't think there's an equivalent for sex work in a utopian communist society. Definitely not work in terms of wage labors.
I mean, people get empowered by it. Like, people like it.
There's no money.
There's no money, so you would just be stripping for fun or, having sex for fun.
Yeah, which, just do that.
Which people do.
I can't picture that sort of transaction would be in a communist society anyway.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that wouldn't exist. So that's, I think, what he's saying in terms of abolishing it overall. That would be my interpretation.
We can interpret it as, hey, they're workers just like the rest of us, and they should also unionize and
everything should be as safe and as respectable as it possibly can for them now. And just like every other job, let's make it to where it doesn't need to happen, really.
Yeah. Okay, I'm into that. Let's see. Okay, I liked this note about rescuing education from the influence of the ruling class. I want that to happen.
Yeah, for sure. His point of view on that was to put education in the hands of the workers, in the hands of the proletariat would control that and govern for themselves how their schools are run instead of having them, like any sort of cultural thing geared toward pushing people into capitalism.
Yeah. Because we'd like to do a whole episode on this. Would be how especially the American education system is set up to brainwash you into loving capitalism and to obeying authority and all that good stuff.
We definitely need a episode on that for sure.
Yeah.
The need to free that from the grasp of the ruling class. He goes on to, I thought this was a good section here, talking about women's liberation, basically, right?
Yeah, so I like this note, this sentence, the bourgeois sees his wife as a mere instrument production. And my first thought was immediately like the girl boss movement, because I see a lot of feminist spaces really celebrating like women CEOs and like women-owned businesses. And I'm like, that doesn't mean it's a good thing, you know? Yeah. Like, if it's a small business, sure, like if you're fucking handcrafting jewelry or something. But if you're the CEO of, Yahoo, you're still the CEO of Yahoo. You're still exploiting people.
Yeah, more female war criminals,
Exactly. Like, whenever people were talking about Joe Biden's running mate being a woman, I'm like, Sarah Palin was a woman, y'all. Women aren't all good. Like, I hate to break it to you. Sometimes women can be bad.
Mm-hmm. It's a matter of class, that's what he's talking about there. And he also is referring to the family dynamic that he mentioned, that the bourgeois, when he hears that the instruments of production are to be exploited in common, he automatically thinks that, they're going to communize women too. All right. Seeing women grossly as this like commodity to be owned by the individual bourgeoisie rather than communally or, owned by society, when he's saying communists aren't about that. We don't think people should be owned at all.
I'm kind of confused by that. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, he's saying that the typical capitalist sees their wife as someone that belongs to them.
Okay.
All right. And so when he hears the communists are coming after your private property, he thinks, my wife. Because he sees his wife as property. He's like, dude, you're the one who sees a person as a property. Like, you're the one who's fucked up, not us,
Yeah, yeah.
And he's saying that, that class does see women as instruments of production in the sense of production, of reproduction, of
Yeah, for sure.
controlling that. And he's saying, communists aren't about that. Communists want women to be free from that sort of domination.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, I was having this conversation with, like, some people on Instagram in that wonderful comment section that capitalism and the patriarchy are just they're a rat king in terms of tied together.
Yeah.
They are just all the same thing. And, like, it disproportionately affects women.
Mm-hmm.
And we were having a discussion of just, like, someone said something like, isn't it funny how, like, so many capitalists are men? And we were just like, and someone was like, well, there's tons of women capitalists too, the whole girl boss movement. And we're just like, yeah, for sure. But, like, let's not pretend that women have it easier. Like,
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to sit here and say all women are not capitalists, and that's great. But I'm also not going to say that, like, women aren't disproportionately affected.
Yeah. And how have women capitalists or anyone that's not male capitalists, how have they gotten to where they are in high positions and everything?
Fucking people over.
By playing the game, by playing by those rules that the patriarchy has set out, right? It's not that they are radically advancing a feminist agenda in where they are. They're getting by, by those rules.
Yeah. I liked this line a lot, which is, the communists have no need to introduce community of women. It has existed from time immemorial. I really liked that.
Yeah.
Because it is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's basically burning them there and saying, yeah, like you said, women are already doing their thing. They're already cool. And, you guys are lame for not thinking that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. He talks more about prostitution.
Yeah, he mentions it. He's using it as a tool to deride the bourgeoisie and everything, saying, basically, you guys are the ones who are treating women like property and everything. We want to get away from that.
Okay. A little slut-shamey, but okay.
Yeah. I don't think it was his best line.
Not his best take.
Yeah.
I liked this part, the working men have no country. The idea that first we have to take over and we can be a nation, but then whenever we're done with that, we should be done with that, right? Isn't that what he's saying?
Yeah. His process was take over the nations, use it for yourself, transform them that way. And if we do that in, multiple nations and stuff, we can gradually just take those nations on down, man. You don't need that.
Yeah. And again, that was one of my big revelations last week, was the idea of the state falling away, because no one ever talks about that part.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, I liked the idea of putting an end to, quote, the exploitation of one nation by another. I like that.
Yeah.
Because that is a big part of capitalism.
World peace, man. No more imperialism, no more warfare. None of that.
And this next line is very shady. The charges against communism made from a religious, a philosophically, and generally from an ideological standpoint are not deserving of serious examination.
Yeah, he's just like, I ain't even going to waste my time on that.
He's just like, not moving on.
Yeah,
love it.
That was good. He gets into a little bit of philosophy, though, in terms of discussing the change in religious ideas, the change in philosophical ideas and everything.
Yeah, I made a couple of notes on that. Let's see. He says, the ideas of religious freedom of consciousness merely gave expression to the sway of free competition within the domain of knowledge. So again, talking about how religion has been used as a tool to encourage competition and encourage freedom in the sense of you're free to exploit people.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was confused on this next bit because basically my takeaway was like, so is he cool with religion or is he not cool with religion?
Marx thought religion was dumb, personally.
Okay.
He understood why it happened. From his perspective, people created religion as a way to understand what was going on, as a way, a imperfect expression of their problems with the world. But this is where he starts to actually quote his critics, and say, oh, critics say that, whatever. Critics say that
5 stars.
Religion and all this stuff, they've changed, but you've still had religion in some sense, right? So, these communists, they think that they're going to change this thing radically, but come on, there's still going to be religion, there's still going to be morality, philosophy, whatever. And he's just like, that's bullshit. Here's why. Even though society has changed in the past, what hasn't changed is that there have been class antagonisms, right? We've had the feudal lords and the serfs, the bourgeoisie and the there's always been these classes at each other's throat.
Cycle.
That part is what is going to change. We're not talking about moving to another system with classes against each other. We're talking about the proletariat taking power and then there not being any more classes because they're not exploiting anyone. It's just going to be proletariats hanging out, having a blast. So what he's saying is, we don't know what's going to happen after that. And he says, I think we're not going to have all this religion stuff and everything because its origins, those class antagonisms, are no longer there. So why do you have it?
Okay.
He says, with that gone, you're not going to have to worry about this stuff.
Well, if you think about it, a lot of religion are codes for morality. And if you are in the true utopia where you have no wants, or I guess no needs, then there's probably not as many moral quandaries going around because you're like, I'm good. I am taken care of. Yeah,
that's a big part of it for sure, is with the elimination of that material want, people aren't going to have as many problems as they do now, as many vices ideally as they do now either. So.
Yeah. And
that's kind of a human nature-y sort of thing. There's no way to prove it. This is kind of a prediction of his.
Yeah, very theoretical.
Yeah.
Okay. He says, in the hands of the state, i.e. of the proletariat, organizes the ruling class. Again, the proletariat gets to take over the state. Yeah, the proletariat, controls the state and is now the ruling class is what it means. Okay, so I like that.
Now the workers are in charge. They call the shots. They run the state. And then he goes on to outline the
shit they want to do.
And he kind of hedges and says, this might not be the same for everywhere, but generally, this is what we think we're going to do. What do you think about this?
I have a ton of check marks written by a lot of these to indicate I approve. Some of them got multiples because I was excited about them.
This is a good one to read through.
Yeah, let's do it.
For our listeners, let's tell them what the 10-step program for communism.
Okay. You get your chip after a year. It's great.
Yeah.
All right. Number 1. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to public purposes. I just wrote universal housing, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Universal housing and publicly owned. There's nobody owning any land that is owned by the people. If there are rents charged to that, it's all used in public ways. It's not given to any landlords individually.
Okay, so no rent. I like that.
That's how it's set up. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would be. I'm just trying to think of an example. So my apartment building is now owned by everyone who lives here instead of a landlord.
Yeah, or by the state, if it's owned by the state.
Oh, yeah, because the workers took over.
So one system of how it might work is you pay rent on it, right? Because you are making money at work. You're still going to work and making money, but you're not getting, you're getting a fair amount. Mm-hmm. And when you pay rent, it goes to the government. And the government gives everybody hey, this is your housing voucher. It's a certain amount of money and you can just use it to pay our rents if you want, and if you want something fancy, you can use extra money to get something fancy. If you want something regular, you can use just that. That should cover it. I don't know.
Okay. So wait, does my rent, would it go to the upkeep of the apartment building or is the government taking care of that?
The government would be running it. Yeah, I mean, I guess I guess you could have it more decentralized. You could have the apartment run as a little co-op and everybody. That would work too. Either way.
Okay. Either way. Either way, no more property.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one.
Step 2.
Heavy progressive or graduated income tax. Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah. I don't even have any questions on that. I want that.
Yeah. 95% on those top guys.
Yeah. They don't fucking need it. Have you ever seen that tweet where it's if we just taxed Jeff Bezos, we could pay for college for everyone? That's it. A 4.5% tax on him. That's it.
Jeez.
All right, I had a question on the next one. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. What is he talking about?
Immigrants would be people who take their ball and go home instead of adapting to the new rules, right? So they leave the country. They're whatever, you can't take my plantation and slaves from me, I'm leaving.
Okay, shitheads.
Yeah, so all that sort of thing. And rebels, obviously, would be people who say, fuck this worker state, and they take up their guns, and, basically it's,
You fight.
the people who you would worry about if this came to pass in America, like getting their guns and going after them.
Okay.
You skipped one, though.
Oh, did I?
Yeah,
Oh.
Step 3, abolition of all rights of inheritance.
Yeah, I wrote by that because I want to know how that works. So you can't pass things on to people anymore?
The most radical and effective way of this would be 100% inheritance tax.
Oh, okay.
So when you die, you're dead, man. You're gone. So your stuff is taken by the state.
I think that would be very hard for a lot of people.
I'm fine with a cap. Let's say you want to leave $1 million to somebody. Total. Okay, that's it. Total.
Yeah.
$1 million,
that sounds cool.
and then everything up from that, 100% tax.
Yeah, because I think the States has this big narrative of working to provide for your children, for a better life and stuff.
Thing is, under socialism, everyone's got that chance. Everybody's
Yeah,
got
okay.
that.
That makes sense then. So like basically saying, hey, we're providing for you, so you don't have to do it. The state will do that.
In a real socialist thing, it would be way lower than $1 million. But that's something reasonable for Americans who want to, the debt. They oppose the death tax, and they want to make it to
the death tax.
To where you can leave, your huge company or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because I feel like inheritance laws have been so big, just so encompassing of keeping up these structures. Like, that's how the ruling class continues to propagate. Because they keep passing shit to their rich sons.
Exactly. It carries on. It makes more and more of them. It's, Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next one, number 5. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's like public banking, basically.
Yeah, I like that. Because I am confused by banks. I'm just like, how can you make money off of my money? That doesn't seem correct.
Banks are confusing.
Yeah.
Yep, they definitely are.
I think it's purposefully. I also would like to talk about, this is maybe another episode, I feel like in the States, at least, we are not given a good financial education. I learned everything about credit scores from our parents and from fucking up my credit score.
Yeah, you're not, all those times spent saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school could be spent instead learning about that, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know any of that shit. Like, I opened like an Old Navy card and Kyle was like, that's a bad idea. And I was like, I didn't know that. Like, nobody told me.
For sure. Yeah. We don't get much of a financial education.
Like, at all. Is it? I bet it's because they want to be purposely confusing.
Yeah. You want people to know just enough to be good consumers for you.
To feel like they're participating.
And to feel like they're participating, but to participate the right way. Like, you want people to use credit cards and not to pay them off like every month. You want them to make minimum payments and be paying you extra money all the time. You want to make it as simple, as easy to use as possible, but
as easy to spend.
Yeah. You only want them to use it in that way that makes you more money. So
okay. So yeah. So if we had a national bank, they wouldn't be pulling that shit.
Yeah, if you had a public bank, we technically have a national, like the Federal Reserve Bank.
I guess we do.
But that's run by bullshit business people. So
I feel like they're just wizards in there. I don't even know what they do. I feel like there's like, now things are expensive. I do not know anything about finances, in case it's not clear. Number 6, centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. I love that. I would really like that.
Nationalize the railways.
Yeah.
Nationalize telecommunications. Nationalize internet service providers. Make it to where everybody has free Wi-Fi broadband everywhere that they have.
It fucking should be. I mean, as this time period especially has shown us, it's a fucking human right. Like, you can't.
Public utility, yeah.
You can't function without it. Like, kids right now who are doing remote learning, if they don't have internet, what the fuck are they supposed to do? They don't get to learn.
Districts are down to like driving buses, like school buses out there, rigging them with a Wi-Fi hotspot and
oh my God,
driving them out to neighborhoods that don't have that. Yeah.
Or like telling people to come to school parking lots to get Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Too. It's wild. So yeah, do away with that. Nationalize it. Make it public. Provide it for everyone.
Yeah, I want a high-speed rail system. That'd be rad.
Tell me about it.
Okay, number 7. I put 3 check marks by this one. I really liked it. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state. Oh, this is why I liked it. The bringing and cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil, generally in accordance with a common plan. I love this. Sustainability.
It is Green New Deal before Green New Deal existed. Yeah.
Yeah, man. He was on it. He's on that trend.
Mm-hmm. Publicly run a environmental program.
I love that.
Yep.
Okay, I was confused about this. equal liability of all to work, establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. What does that first bit mean? I understood the second bit.
It's another way to say the first stage, that socialist stage, where it's from each according to his ability to each according to his contribution.
Okay.
It's the stage where there aren't any more bosses, but people still work to get what they, to get what they need. Workers wouldn't be exploited. Everyone who could work would work. So when he says everybody has equal liability to work, means everybody has to work.
Okay.
But who he's targeting isn't like who Republicans target when they say that. He's targeting the bosses. He says the bosses don't work.
They have to do their fair share.
Yeah,
now.
He says those lazy assholes need to actually do work if they're going to make any money. They can't just steal the profits off of other people.
Okay. I like the agricultural armies thing, because we could just be way better at food than we are.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of all the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the populace over the country. I'm bad at reading out loud. I never volunteered for that in class, but I like this. Yeah, so we talked a lot about urbanization already and how that kind of swelled the rise of capitalism and stuff like that. But I like the idea of starting to spread out more and not being so urbanized.
It is kind of interesting. Yeah, it wasn't one that stood out to me because I thought maybe like, it's a little weird. I don't know. Sure, do that if you want. But I guess it could lead to interesting environmental, especially, impacts.
That's what I was thinking, just because of things like, I don't remember what it's called, but a concrete jungle, is that what it's
jungle,
called?
yeah.
Yeah.
The temperatures being way higher. And
yeah, it's like up to 10 degrees warmer in a city area. And just basically trying to make our systems more sustainable by spreading out more. Because when you have a ton of people together, it's going to get nasty.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. Good one there. Step 9 is good. All right, step 10, last one.
Step 10 has 3 check marks, and next to it I wrote, I'm horny for it.
What you got?
Free education for all children in public schools.
Heck yeah.
Abolition of children's factory labor in its present form. Okay, we don't have that, but that's okay. Combination of education with industrial production. Is that like trade school?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of did some research on this too because I wasn't sure. There's a part in Capital where that's his big tome where he talks about what education in a communist society might look like. And he says basically it's kind of trade schooly. He thinks that education in general, once children are old enough, should combine, his quote is, combine productive labor with instruction and gymnastics, not only as one of the methods of adding to the efficiency of production, but as the only method of producing fully developed human beings.
Okay.
So this is kind of a holistic approach in saying, it'd be good for kids to learn to do things.
Yeah.
Especially because in this utopia, you're not really training them to do work that they have to do to survive. You're just training them to be able to do things for themselves,
Okay. Like what kind of things?
I mean, like woodworking,
Okay. Just for fun shit?
Fixing things. Yeah, it can be hobbies. It can be
it's all
fixing
electives.
Things. It can be, universal shop class,
yeah.
But it can be handy things, repair things. It can be
Okay.
farm
or like
work.
gardening, yeah. Like here's how to run your own little commie garden.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Well, I have a lot of feelings on education that are very nebulous, but as someone who knew fairly early on in high school what they wanted to do, I definitely got tired of bullshit classes where it's like, I'm never going to use this information on, cell anatomy. So can I not? Could I just skip that one? So I think it'd be nice if we had more practical learning.
Yeah, I think so. I think the key to that is, worker or popular control of this rather than it being in the hands of a state that's controlled by the capitalists. Because the way it stands now, if you track things more and say, okay, some students are going to be better for this, some students are going to be better for that, the whole goal of that is to train people to work for the capitalists, right?
Mm-hmm. Like how in high schools, pretty early on, they start separating people by technically it's by grade point average and stuff, but it's also by income on if they're going to push you to take AP courses or other classes, or if they're going to push you to do, our school had the career center that they built. So they started pushing that on, honestly, on mostly lower income kids.
Yeah, so that's why when you're talking about these trade schools kind of aspect to it, you want it to be, as a means of improving the kid, as a means of
like if they want to do it, sure, but not just because you are in a certain demographic, you should probably go here.
Right, yeah, for the betterment of the student rather than for the betterment of capitalist society, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm into that. Sounds good. The next bit, political power, properly so called, is merely the organized power of one class for oppressing another. What does that mean? I highlighted it in yellow, which means cool, but it should be in red, which means explain it to me.
Oh, this paragraph all goes together. I'll
summarize.
What Marx is saying here is that the proletariat revolution will be the last class versus class revolution.
Okay.
Once the proletariats are in charge, right, another oppressed class is not going to show up because the proletariats aren't doing any oppressing.
Okay, because everything else has been a cycle of like, okay, now
these guys are in charge and get to do the oppressing.
Feudalism is gone. Yeah, exactly.
Instead, now the proletarians are in charge. There's no opposition class because there's no oppressing going on, and now there's no class struggle. And therefore, where it says they will thereby have abolished its own supremacy as a class. That's because they're not supreme to any other. There's no other class to be supreme to.
That's really interesting to me.
Yeah, they're the only class around. They're not bossing anybody around. Everybody is there together.
Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting because it's like, once we get to a worker-run government, we have to trust that those workers, I mean, I guess it's just like everyone's going to be accountable to everybody else to make things so, I mean, I don't know if strict is the right word, but to make things so dang equitable that they can't have power, if that makes sense. So like nobody can be like, well, I'm making the rules here so I can get extra.
Yeah, that's a good point. You want to guard against certain factions or small groups or people from developing any sort of privilege over other people.
Yeah,
and we don't mean
corruption.
just like material, but like power, the ability to command.
You can't have a president.
You can't have structures be so where some people can amass power and wealth for themselves and start to get a class oppression going again. That's one of the things you see where states go wrong, like Russia and stuff like that under Stalin and things.
Okay, cool. We're now in section 3. We made it.
Oh, this one's a good one. So Marx is just talking a bunch of shit in this section. It's so good. Yeah. He's just criticizing all these different groups of quasi-socialists and why they're dumb.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. I was, most of my questions were like, who the fuck are these people that he's talking about? So, yeah.
He starts with the feudal socialists, which is strange.
Yeah, it's a strange term.
They wouldn't have called themselves socialists. This is just him making fun of them. But he's making fun of aristocrats and royalists who are, in his time still around. And remember, they're the ones who are trying to turn back the clock and say,
yes,
oh, we want to go back to when we were in charge. But how do they present that to the people who are now the ones you need to convince? What they do, he says, is they try to convince the proletariat that things were better back in the old days. Okay. When the feudal lords and the king looked out for them. It's a sad and naked plea for power. It's just them saying, like, please, just put us back in charge and we'll make everything good. You don't like those bourgeoisie, right? And he's just like, that's dumb, guys. Like, everybody sees what you're trying to do. You're just trying to put yourself back in charge.
Okay. That makes sense. Who does it go after next? Oh, I love that he used the term highfalutin.
Highfalutin, yeah.
I thought that was like a modern term. I was impressed.
Yeah, I don't know if that's just something in translation. I would love to see that that is in German, but
I'm sure they have a word for it. Okay.
They have a word for everything.
They do.
Oh, right. The Christianity part was you.
Yes. Right? I was interested in that. So I like that he brought up, has not Christianity declaimed against private property, against marriage, against the state. So this was interesting to me because like that was definitely part of early Christianity, was the idea of like, no, we're done with this. Like, you follow me and that's it. Your wife is not more important than God, like any of that stuff.
Property, certainly not. Yeah.
Property. Yeah. Give it all away. The whole like rich man can't go into heaven, something about a camel. And then that has been totally flip-flopped now.
Yeah. What he's criticizing here, this idea of clerical socialism or Christian socialism, is that it's just it's always been flexible. All right. His earlier theory about how religion comes from the
economy.
Religion and culture, yeah, that all comes from the economy. He's saying it's changed over time. Like you said, in its early days, it's just like he's describing, against private property, against marriage, against the state. It evolves from a rebel sect of Judaism to the official religion of the Roman Empire, you know? And from then on, it's more of an establishment thing. Christianity, like he says, talks about charity, talks about poverty, talks about celebrating kind of being humble and being in your place.
Yeah.
Sort of thing, following the rules.
Yeah, because now that the people in charge have it, they're going to emphasize those messages. Yeah,
so he's saying Christian socialism or whatever of his time, and it's very specific to his time. He weirdly says it's but the holy water with which the priest consecrates the heart burnings of the aristocrat.
What does that mean?
He's saying that they use religion to kind of feel better about themselves. It makes them feel like they're good people, they're noble. They would stand up for the small folk if only those damn bourgeoisie would give them power again.
Okay.
The nobles kind of doing their part to help people.
Okay, so the idea of like, I mean, God damn it, I gotta stop referencing Downton Abbey.
But yes, yeah.
But yeah, definitely that of like, oh, I'm providing jobs. I can't believe my servants want to go work in a factory. Like, I'm the one providing for them and letting them live on my land and shit.
Yeah, so the cultural aspect of that, the religious side, would be Christian socialism saying, do good for people, look out for people, help people who are below you. The key part for Marx being, why are they below you?
Yeah. I laughed because your dog barked. Hi, Orion. All right, part B, petty bourgeois socialism.
Petty bourgeois socialism, also lame. They're also losers. He says that basically that they're pretty good at criticizing capitalism. Okay. Mm-hmm. He kind of gives some examples. These are kind of precursor guys immediately to him. Sismondi, some French guy.
Sismondi, yeah.
They say they're good at pointing out the problems and saying, hey, capitalism's fucking some folks over. All right. But what do they want to do?
They wanted to go back to the old guild master ways.
Yeah, they want to turn back the clock either by just being straight up reactionary and saying like, let's go back to feudalism, or by this is that last sentence that you're like, what? Corporate guilds for manufacture and patriarchal relations in agriculture?
Yeah, what is that?
It's kind of like historically specific there, but just generally putting the old powers back in charge of the new industry. So trying to put old artisans guilds in charge of the big factories and the mills, or having, modern agriculture that can produce all this stuff, but putting serfs back working there again.
Yeah. Okay. My attempt at an example was basically keep all the benefits of capitalism, but somehow make it small, like the whole shop small or shop organic movement. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, you would keep the scale small in terms of the producers. The producers would, they'd be run by a small shop or something. Mm-hmm. Marx just says this is idiotic because that
doesn't make sense.
You put it in place one day, it's gone the next. Like, it's immediately going to get destroyed. There's a reason it was already moved. We already moved past it because it no longer worked for what
like competition-wise, that won't work.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, the next day it'd be gone. Bad idea. Why did you even come up with this, is what he's saying.
Okay, got it.
I liked your blues doodle with this. That was great.
Thank you. He used the word a miserable fit of the blues, and I was like, so I drew a little guy being sad. All right, German or true socialism. I love this title. Yeah,
you were great on the breakdown here. Basically, he says the French came up with some ideas about socialism and stuff because they were actually experiencing it, experiencing like those class dynamics changing. Mm-hmm. And then when the Germans got a hold of it, they made it completely abstract and weird and like theoretical.
Just theoretical, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't know, they didn't know what they were doing with it, and they just labeled things in this weird, like, psychological way almost. They become philosophy bros, basically.
Okay.
They're just trying to sound smart, trying to sound, educated and cool and intellectual and complicated and moody and artistic or whatever.
Okay.
But they're actually lame, and they don't want to put their ideas into practice.
Okay.
Philosophy bros that were losers.
Okay, so they're philosophy bros that were loser. Okay, so they tried to enact this and it didn't work, basically. because it was just too theoretical?
Because it was the wrong moment.
It was too early.
It was too early, yeah. You made a note in here about the liberal movement.
Yeah, well, who is that in this context? Because this was olden times.
Yeah, in olden times, and just a difference in Americans versus everyone else. This might be interesting for American or international listeners to kind of understand this distinction, because it's confusing to lots of people. When Americans, right, when we use liberals, what do you think of?
I mean, like, gay rights.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Being kind of sort of left of
Socially,
center.
yeah. So you're into social shit, social justice, that kind of stuff, right?
You're into social justice. You're into like sort of, government social safety net sort of thing.
Yeah.
Environmentalism, that's what liberalism is
In the States.
in America. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas in the rest of the world, liberalism and the classic form of liberalism, this liberal movement he's talking about, is about free markets.
I was wondering
free
that.
trade.
Because, yeah, I hear a thing. I mean, isn't that what Britain's Liberal Party is? Because I always hear about them doing bad things.
They're called the Liberal Democrats. Like, if you were to call somebody a Liberal Democrat in the United States, this means they're like just to the right of Bernie Sanders or something, But in Britain, a Liberal Democrat is like
An asshole.
Yeah, they're a libertarian, basically.
Jeez, ugh.
Free trade, limited government, property rights, individualism, all that. That's liberalism to the rest of the world.
That's weird. Okay. Well, that's interesting, because I mean, he's made that point throughout this, is that there are all these cries about, well, this is about freedom, this is about individuality, but they're talking about the freedom of markets and not the freedom of people.
The freedom of markets and the freedom of the people who are running the markets. Democracy, but for property owners.
Yeah.
What he's talking about here is a bourgeois movement against the old feudalism, or the remnants of it. So the next part, where he talks about the German socialists trying to do stuff, what he's saying is they try to introduce they're like, oh, damn, we've been thinking about this for so long. Let's go out there with it, right? So they go out there and they say, we got to get rid of all this lame bourgeois stuff. They start talking shit about it, basically. They're like, we don't want democracy for property classes. We don't want this. But they just weren't paying attention, basically, to what was happening. Like, the bourgeois were fighting for those things that they then stepped out and said, we don't like that stuff.
Okay.
So the ruling class said, look at these guys. You want to be like these guys? Get them out of here. And they crushed them.
Okay. So it was just they didn't have enough people, I guess?
Didn't have enough people. Also, this was just a small little intellectual.
They just showed up like, oh, I've been studying in my lab. Here's what I think you should do. When it's like, no, we're not even there yet.
Our book club thinks that we should,
Okay, cool. Let's see. He basically shits on them for a few more paragraphs, right?
Yep.
All right. We'll get on to the next section.
He just says they're losers.
Yeah. Conservative or bourgeois socialism. I loved this part because it starts shitting on, let's see. This section belongs to economists, philanthropists, humanitarians, improvers of the condition of the working class, organizers of charity, which is what I highlighted, members of Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, temperance fanatics, hole and corner reformers of every imaginable kind. I thought this was really interesting because it says that these people want all the advantages of modern social conditions without the struggles and dangers resulting therefrom. So they want these benefits of capitalism, but they still want to take care of people without realizing, like, you have to get rid of capitalism to take care of people. Like, I have talked about it before, but I have conflicting feelings about charity. Like, thanks for doing that, but also, like, we shouldn't have to rely on that.
It ties into when we were saying, when you were asking about the small business and saying, what if I decide to distribute the profit to my workers? Good
for
but
you.
You shouldn't have been able to decide. What if someone decides, I'm going to give 95% of my wealth away? Great. But you shouldn't have had that choice, because some people won't make that choice.
Exactly. And again, I get so mad about these stories being shared about, good CEOs. And I'm like, fuck it. We shouldn't have any CEOs. And if they're good, like, congratulations. But most of them aren't good. Like, I shouldn't have to rely on one person's whims. What if they had a bad day and they're like, fuck it, I'm keeping all my money. Like, I should not have to rely on that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because Marx kind of makes the distinction between two slight variations of these losers. The first part is like, some bourgeois socialists they dream that one day everyone will be a bourgeoisie. Everyone will just
How does that work?
rich like them, and we'll just all go to the country club together or something.
That's like not how that works. You can't
Yeah.
do that. Someone has to get fucked over.
Exactly. Yeah. He says, they want the current system without the proletariat, basically. Just
Yeah.
maybe robot slaves. I don't know. But that's the first group, and then he gets into the second and he kind of questioned about the administrative reforms, but basically he's saying they want to make the material conditions for the workers better,
Yes.
right? But they want to make it better for workers. They don't want the workers to make it better for themselves.
They don't get to make their own decisions.
Right. They want the workers to, workers don't try to take power for yourselves politically or in the workplace. Vote for us, and we'll help you do that.
Okay, so it's kind of that classic, well, they won't know how to spend this money if we just give them this money kind of thing.
Yeah, and they certainly shouldn't be in control. They don't know how to run it. They don't know how to do any of this excellent innovation and stuff that they do. Yeah, so keep the bourgeoisie in power, but do it nicely.
Yeah, I wrote next to this section, I just wrote liberals with an angry face next to it.
Yes.
A bit of self-hatred there because I used to identify as liberal. But,
Same. Totally. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, it is that idea of when you're baby woke, you know the right things to say, and you're like, I think we should help poor people. Great. I don't think there should be poor people.
Yes.
Not in the sense that I'm going to exterminate them.
That's the other side of the political spectrum.
But no, in the sense that that shouldn't exist anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I like your note then later because he's talking about, he's kind of characterizing this and saying, we're going to have all the same things. Yeah, we're going to have free trade for the benefit of the working class, protective duties for the benefit of the working class. And then he says prison reform for the benefit of the working class.
So is he saying we should just not have prison?
Well, I guess he might have been meaning that. What I think he's saying here, is he lists a couple not good things. I don't know. Who cares about free trade?
Yeah, it's like free trade doesn't actually benefit the working class. That's what he's saying. Mm-hmm. Like he's being sarcastic.
He's saying basically don't be fooled even when something sounds good. Like prison reform, right? It's great. It's good. Do it. We should do prison reform. Workers have to, though, take power for themselves instead of have the bourgeoisie give them some nice little prison reform.
Okay.
It's nice to be less exploited. And also we're not saying don't do anything don't fight for prison reform too. Definitely do it. Take whatever they're willing to give us, but don't settle for that being anything you ever get. You want to be in charge of yourself rather than having someone else do some nice things for you.
That makes sense. Okay. So the idea of you can still vote for,
Sure,
just shit on the Democrats for a second. You can still vote for a Democrat because they're gonna help things in the meantime while still being like, hey, this isn't fucking enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. The section.
All right, gets to critical utopian socialism and communism.
Yeah, I think I was confused on this part.
He starts talking about the old utopian socialists. These are actually precursors to Marxist. Yeah, to Marxism.
People who are like, I'm going to go start my own shit later.
Yeah, basically.
I want a whole episode on that.
They're wild. And I like that you pointed out in the footnotes there the Communist Colony.
Yes.
By Cabot, his American Communist Colony.
Yeah, I want to know more.
For part of that, they were in Texas, actually. In the Denton area.
Denton.
So it's kind of a sad story, but we'll take a look at it. It doesn't turn out so well. But basically these guys were, they're going to go start their own shit. And they were dreamers. These people were thinking what would the ideal world be? Let's do that.
Okay.
But Marx's argument is that basically they weren't really ready for revolution at that time. The society hadn't caught up to that, hadn't got to that stage yet. So when they're dreaming about these things and trying to put their ideals into practice, it doesn't match up with the material world. It doesn't match up with where history is yet. So it fails.
Okay. I kind of interpreted it more like these people kind of opted out of the system instead of trying to overthrow the system, and that's not going to work. Because he talks about how they reject all political and essentially all revolutionary action. They wish to attain their ends by peaceful means, necessarily doomed to failure. Basically, they're saying, I'm out. I'm outie. I'm going to go start my own community. And cool. That's not going to work probably because your community is going to end up being dependent on other communities. You can't have your own place unless other places are also doing the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's totally that's definitely a good reading of it. He's then criticizing their strategy and their tactics, right? Their tactics of separating and trying to do their own thing. But he's also criticizing their whole idea of bringing this about when the time isn't right. Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, thanks. Cool. Yeah, I wrote good ideas, bad execution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're just trying to, fuck off and do their own thing, and it doesn't work. Like you said, they're still going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, that's pretty much that whole section.
Yep.
But I do want to get into those colonies at some point.
They sound kind of cool.
They do.
But kind of, it also doesn't work.
I'm sure it doesn't. All right, section 4. Position of the communists in relation to various existing opposition parties.
This one could have used some naming work. Like, that one.
Yeah. Engels should have been a more strict editor if he was involved in this editing process.
All right, so mainly here he's talking about how the communists work with various groups, right?
Yeah, so the whole friends of convenience thing of like, we'll team up with whoever the fuck we need to get some reforms. Mm-hmm. But also, we're not pals.
Whoever's fighting for reforms, we're on it, Anything to help the working class, even if it's within the current position. So earlier when we were talking about abolishing sex work eventually, in the meantime, improve working conditions for sex workers.
Yeah.
Abolish, required work eventually, but in the meantime, help workers.
Yeah.
So what he's saying here is abolish, bourgeois democratic electoralism and all that, right? Voting for a rich representative to go, help you out of the goodness of their heart. But in the meantime, use that and get what you can out of it.
Yeah. He gives like specific examples, which like I didn't know anything about any of these, so that was interesting, I guess.
Oh, all those parties? Yeah. They just parties that existed back then.
Okay, cool. Basically the idea of betraying people once they give you what they want, which I love.
Yeah. Fight for it, fight for them, comrades, and then actually your class enemy. Get out.
I got a little sad because he's like, we can do this in Germany. It's going to be great. And, this is 1848. Things don't turn out so hot for Germany.
They don't.
When does Marx die?
He died in 1883.
Okay. He didn't get to see it get real bad then, I guess. That's good, at least.
But no, he kind of prematurely predicts a world revolution, maybe starting with Germany and then spreading all over the place.
That didn't work.
Well, yeah. He was very early in that prediction, and the reason he said for Germany is because of their productive capacity or whatever. He basically said that they're further along in this. They've got a developed working class, and they're closer to the eve of it. But yeah, no, incorrect, wrong, didn't work.
Oh,
yeah,
you can't get them all. That's okay. I like this last bit. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win.
Yes. Famous last lines. Let the ruling classes tremble at a communistic revolution. Like, that's dope.
That's very dope.
Then the famous working men of all countries unite.
Love it.
Our workers of the world unite is sometimes how it's...
Yeah, let's make it more gender neutral.
How it's put. But yeah, no, it's a strong ending there for the overall piece.
Yeah. Cool. We finished that. That took a while.
It really did, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Communist Manifesto. Our take on it, at least. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's widely debated, these various passages, and we're kind of interpreting it in a modern way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what I liked about reading it with you, because you very much had the historical context, and I was like, hey, this is how I'm seeing it from like 2020,
Yeah.
Let's do a very brief organization corner.
All right. In our organization corner, we're talking about...
Babies first, organizing.
We talked last time about what organizing is. Anything to do to raise class consciousness, right? To grow the working class, to make people realize you're in the working class, fight for it. Okay. What is that?
Yeah.
What can you do? In first steps, the easiest thing you can do is talk to people in your life. Talk to people you know. And I'm not talking about like preaching to them. It's not a great idea. Don't do that.
No, doesn't work.
Don't just go telling them the good news of communism. They'll look at you funny. All right. The best way to do this is to listen and to contextualize things for people. So when they talk to you, when people are talking about, they went to the doctor and they got a huge bill for that or whatever. They didn't realize they were going to have to pay this much for glasses or something, or just regular shit. Or they know somebody who got laid off. Or whatever.
Or like an ambulance costs more than the treatment at the hospital cost or something like that.
Yeah. Or they're looking at, or net, gosh, now so many people are like, how am I going to pay rent? I'm struggling to get by. I got laid off. So many people are going through that. You don't want to come out of the gate and say, well, communism would fix that.
Have you considered communism?
But you want to phrase it in ways that, make them realize that they're not in it alone. Mm-hmm. They haven't done anything wrong to deserve this.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of guilt in money right now.
Yeah, and try to tie it to a bigger systemic thing. Like, man, yes, so many people are going through this. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that so terrible? So many people are suffering in that situation, or, so many people go through that. And it doesn't have to be that way is a big thing. Kind of presenting positive alternatives. What if everybody got health care? What if everybody was guaranteed housing? Those sorts of things. Yeah.
I think for me, it comes down to these conversations of like, you're struggling right now. And they're like, a lot of it's like, I'm in therapy, not to brag, but it's about like validating these feelings of like, yeah, you do work hard. You don't deserve to be treated like this. And everyone's being treated like this. And isn't that fucked up? Instead of saying like, that's just how it is, or like, you should have worked harder, or whatever it is. I don't think anyone would just fucking say that to your face, but it's definitely implied in a lot of rhetoric. Mm-hmm.
You're trying to demystify people with this, and what you're trying to do is pull them away from the view that America is, or any place, is a meritocracy. Mm-hmm. Take them away from that. When you're saying this isn't your fault, you're saying, neither is the success of people at the top. They didn't earn that necessarily.
Yeah, because I think people get very sensitive about like, if I go up to someone and say, hey, I think we should have universal housing, people are going to be like, well, they didn't earn that. And it's like, yeah, neither did fucking Jeff Bezos. He didn't earn his shit either. I don't know, just telling them like, it's okay. Like, it's okay if you want free housing. That's a good thing. Like, everyone should have it. And I don't know how to explain that in like a not patronizing way, but
yeah, that's a challenge is presenting this in a way that is more comradely, more equals. Mm-hmm. You don't want to. Quickest way to turn somebody off is just to tell them how much you know and how much they don't.
Oh, for sure.
Don't do that. So, and that's what I like about our discussions here is it's not me telling you like, hey, this is what this means. Please listen.
It's not mansplaining the podcast.
Yeah, like we're talking about it together, and sometimes I have insights on things and sometimes you do. That when you talk about these issues with people, when you see what people just like you and me are going through, or in different walks of life are going through, you can learn a lot about kind of how the world works for different people, how different people see the world.
You gain empathy.
Yeah, and it makes you better at organizing in the future. So it makes you better like at having these, as you have these conversations, you get better at them, and you're better able to kind of get your point across, and better able to listen to what people are saying and translate that into getting them to realize their class position and stuff.
Yeah. So maybe practice on someone who is predisposed to liking you.
Yeah. That's why I said the first steps would be definitely not strangers in the street, right? The first steps would be subtly trying to communize your friends and stuff,
Yeah. I did it. My partner used to be a libertarian. So it only took a few years. We're there now. Now he's listening to this podcast and supporting me.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, I think that would be the basics of the organization corner is start small, talk to people listen more than you speak, and don't preach.
Yeah. Those are good points. I think you're very good at that, if I can brag on you.
Thanks.
You're very empathetic, and like you can talk to people who definitely don't agree with you politically, whereas I just like want to flip the fucking table. So yeah, you're pretty good at that.
Thank you. I try. I'm conflict averse. That's why I do that, actually.
Yes. You're the chillest person alive.
I'm just trying to keep everybody happy. Yeah, you also don't really want to upset people. It's fine to it's also fine to shitpost online. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
You're online. It's a different space. But, it doesn't practically really help the movement much if you're burning liberals on Facebook or whatever. Like, it's fun, but doesn't really get you anywhere.
Yeah.
But regular posting, like just, Oh, Christine, what you do.
Oh.
When you socialist rant and then you follow up with cat pictures, perfect organizing there.
Yes. For more, see my Instagram stories, because I do that about once a week.
Yeah, that's perfect organizing technique. If you have animals, ruthlessly use them to advance the workers' cause, please. That's good.
Yeah.
Do that.
Well, so I have started like trying to engage more with like trolls. I hesitate to just say that that's a good thing in general, but people on the internet have no filter, and they'll just be like, hey, fuck you, you're a fat piece of shit or whatever. And I'll be like, hey, can I ask what prompted you to go insult someone you've never met before, and just like make them look at it again? Because most people will post it and just like fucking leave. But like sometimes people will be like, oh, yeah, I don't know. Like they'll explain, like they have a backstory for doing that.
Huh.
Yeah, some people do. Some people just are assholes.
I thought you would have a 0% success rate with that. Okay, wow.
No, one guy I talked to, I posted some Bernie fan art, and I was going to try to like raise money for him and shit, and someone was just like, I can't remember what the original comment was, but it was very rude. And I was just like, hey, like, can I ask why you're upset about this? I'm just supporting a candidate. I think that's an okay thing for me to do. And they ended up saying that like, they agreed with me on a lot of stuff, but they're just like, I'm just really disenchanted with it. And like, I just don't, it sounded like they were just burned.
Yeah, electoralism is bullshit.
Yeah. And I'm like, I agree with you, dude, but I'm also like, I'll do what I can right now. Like, I don't know. It's interesting to have these conversations with people from a place of empathy. I would follow Rain Dove Model on Instagram. They are like a gender nonconforming model. And they have a lot of these conversations with people who just message them these horrible, like, anti-trans stuff, and they come out with like, hey, how are you doing today? What's going on in your life? And like, it just makes a person realize like, oh, that's another person on the other side of the screen. And it makes them like really start to question like, hey, why did I think that was okay just to like fucking shit on this person that I don't know?
Yeah, for sure. That's an awesome way to look at it.
I don't recommend it for everyone. It takes a lot of emotional energy, but if you got it, sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I'm gonna stick with trying to keep everyone from yelling anything at me.
I don't do it every day, but I try.
All right. So take your first steps in organizing if you want to. If you're to that point yet, like if you're not, that's also okay. I really haven't. I do talking to people and everything, but I have done little beyond in terms of organizing. So I get it if you're not to that point,
I think learning is a big step too. Maybe we skipped over just like learning more about leftist shit, because it is a big world. And if you come into it just like from where I came into it, where I don't know much about it, I would like to know. I don't know if I'm a full tanky because I don't know enough about that. I don't know if I'm an anarchist. So like I need to do more research first, I feel like.
Yeah. Reading about it is good. Listening to various leftist media and stuff.
Very cool podcasts like ours.
Yeah, for sure. You can learn a lot. You don't have to break out old books and, and read them. You don't have to do that. It's confusing a lot of times. So
yeah, as we learned.
But there's so many ways to learn more and get yourself further down the road to the workers' utopia.
Hell yeah. Okay. I think we've talked the shit about the Communist Manifesto. We've talked the shit out of it.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, we really left no stone unturned.
Do you remember earlier this week when I asked you if we thought this was enough for an episode, and then it ended up being enough for 2 episodes?
Yeah, that was, and I was just, no, totally. We have enough content for an hour. I didn't think, how much content we would actually produce from it, but there it is.
Hey, it's okay. When it rains, it pours.
Yeah, and in this, in this context, it's pretty good. Plenty of theory for people to check out. Plenty of things for them to learn to advance their capabilities in terms of supporting the workers' revolution.
Hell yeah. What are we doing next time?
Let's see. Next time we'll be talking. We'll be introducing a little series on Russia, the Russian Revolution.
Hell yeah.
Talking about how that went down and what,
Yeah, do you want to do like a 500-foot view first just to kind of get the lay of the land, like a basic timeline, or do you want to go bit by bit?
I think a basic timeline might be productive. Yeah, I think
so too. Because I
might give everyone the perspective of it.
Yeah, for context, in our like shared document where we plan episodes, I wrote, "What the fuck happened in Russia?" was my question. So I just don't even know. I know very basics. I know there was some bizarre shit. I know there was Cossacks. I know that because I had a a piano piece that I played. It was called The Cossacks, and I loved playing it. It was very fun.
Nice.
It was jaunty.
Yeah, so we'll kind of take that big picture view first, and I think especially American listeners, we don't get a lot of Russian history unless you specifically seek it out in college or something.
I was going to say, yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I think a big view would help too, because that whole fucking college courses are taught on that. So let's just get a summary, and then, I think later episodes we can choose to hone in on a few different parts if we want to.
For sure.
Cool. So yeah, thank you all for listening. You can find us on social media. Twitter is at Teach Communism. At Teach Communism. Instagram is at Teach Me Communism. Email is teachmecommunism@gmail.com. You can also find us on all kinds of podcatchers. And if you really love us and want us to keep going and be happy and all that good stuff, you can write us a review on Apple Podcasts. That would make me very happy.
It would make me happy too.
Good. So don't you want to keep us happy? Yeah, we really appreciate the people who have reviewed already, and people who've followed us on social and stuff too. Thank y'all. That's super kind.
It's awesome.
All right, so that's it. Thank you for teaching me communism.
Anytime, yeah. We'll be back next week, so tune in to Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session.
All right, later, dude.
Bye.